My name is Dominique Avery. I'm a former Simsbury Board of Education member, a former teacher turned TV reporter, and now I'm serving as a member of the Simsbury Community Television Board. This is a show that usually focuses on the Simsbury school system. Today we're going to expand it a little. We're going to discuss the town and education budgets. It's a show for everyone, those of you who have been watching the process carefully on SCTV or in person at Town Hall, or those of you who are just now tuning in. So stay with us as we review the town budget and the Board of Education budget and what it might mean for your taxes and how it compares to other towns. My guests today are former First Selectman, not former anything, Mary Glassman, our new Superintendent of Schools, Matt Curtis.
Good afternoon.
And the Chairman of the Board of Finance, Paul Henault. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Paul, let me start with you. We have about 26 minutes today, exactly 26 minutes.
Okay.
And I'd like to know from you what you want to get across to the people of Simsbury about the town budget.
Sure. Let me talk about a number of things, put it in context a little bit first. As we were talking a little bit before we went on air, we have concerns about what the state budget is going to look like and what the state aid is going to look like for Simsbury. About $6 million of our state or our revenue comes from the state, so we have to pay very close attention to that. We also have a reevaluation this year. Every 5 years there's going to be a reevaluation. We're up this year. Everybody's had visitors going through their house or knocking on the doors. So that's going to be implemented this year. And for almost everyone, the amount went down. So for those of us in municipal government, we have to be concerned about that when your grand list is actually going down. So that will have an impact on the mill rate. We also have concerns that we've addressed, working very closely with the Board of Education and the Board of Selectmen on our pension funds. We have a defined benefit plan. We need to make sure that that plan is secure for our employees moving forward. So we've done some changes in that regarding the investment returns and moved that from 7 3/4 down to 7%, working very closely with the actuary that we have and spending an awful lot of time, I'd say over the last 8 or 9 months working on that. We also have concerns over the Hartford and what's going to happen there. So we know something's going to happen there, we just don't know exactly what's going to replace it, so that brings up some concern. However, on the positive side, we have a very good bond rating, AAA. We recently went out and bonded $5 million worth of projects and got an interest rate of 1.299, which is the lowest we've ever had. Mary and I visited with the bond folks when we did that, and we're actually very surprised at what that rate was. So it really speaks volumes to the strength of Simsbury as a town and what our fiscal strength is. On the other side, in addition to that, the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen have worked very closely with the Board of Finance to come in at our guideline, which was 1.5%. We did that, an increase in the operating budgets. Now that was taking into consideration everything except for the changes in the pension plan and the contributions to the pension plan, which the Board of Finance asked them to increase their budgets on. And we said at the time that we'll hold you harmless for that, but we want you to still bring your budgets in exclusive of that around 1.5. Now what that's going to do, when you add all that up, our town budget and Board of Ed budget, along with our debt retirement, will increase by about 1.94%. That's the amount that will go up. And again, another year where we're below 2%.
That's a combined increase between the two budgets.
And that's on the expenditure side. On the revenue side, when you factor in, and again, this is an assumption based upon what we would get from the state as far as aid goes. When you factor in a mill rate increase due to reevaluation, we'll probably be looking at a mill rate of 37.24%. Again, as as chairman of the Board of Finance, I have to say that's an estimate because we really don't set the mill rate until after the referendum. That night the board meets, and then by then we have a better handle on what we're going to get from the state. We can get a sense of what the voters have done on the referendum, whether they passed it, passed the Board of Selectmen budget, or passed the Board of Ed budget, or rejected one or the other, and then we make our decision.
I'm going to interrupt you here because the reevaluation and the impact on the mill rate and the impact on taxes is something that I think a lot of people are confused about. Maybe we could wander off from the budget exactly and go in that direction. What is that going to mean? The people's reevaluation has meant that most of them have gone down.
Most of them have gone down. The numbers, and Mary may have the exact numbers, but let's assume that they went down 15%, okay? So what that means is the assessment on their home has gone down 15%. If we have raised the mill rate corresponding, so we're basically collecting the same amount of taxes or a little bit more, then for the most part it should be relatively flat or up slightly as to what their actual taxes would be. Again, I have to just qualify that by saying some people it went up or went down more than that, and some people it may not have gone down that much. So there will be a spread as to what the exact impact would be.
Can I ask
Sure.
what kind of a reaction you got from people after the reevaluations were publicized?
Sure. Well, state law, thanks Dominique, thanks for having us today. State law requires that towns revalue their property every 5 years. So Simsbury is required by state law to conduct a revaluation every 5 years, and this is our year. So most of our property owners allowed our contracting company to go in. We want to make sure that folks are being taxed on the actual value of their homes. In some cases, folks identified that they were identified as having an extra bedroom or an extra bathroom. So it's really important that folks look at that card. We went through a process of allowing folks to appeal, to come in and meet with the Board of Assessment Appeals, and that's the process we're going through right now. The number of appeals actually was significantly lower than the last time we went through a revaluation. Because values have declined.
Down, yeah.
I think the misconception folks may have is that because their values went down, that their tax rate will go
Exactly,
down.
that's what I'm getting to.
And I think Paul did a good job explaining that.
Right.
You know, we want to caution folks. In many cases, that is true. But in some cases, we still have to raise the same amount of revenue to pay for our expenses. So once we know what the state budget does for Simsbury, once we know what the operating budgets after the referendum vote in May, then we can set the mill rate. But in most cases, property values did go down. The average, do have the median tax assessment in Simsbury as a result of the recent reevaluation. The median tax assessment is $193,000. That means the average home value in Simsbury is about $276,000. So if you do have an assessment of $193,000, your taxes based on the current mill rate would be about $7,484. So that's a good way to get a sense of what's happening, and hopefully once we set the mill rate, folks will be able to calculate what their new tax rate will be.
Now, something else that Paul mentioned earlier was the impact of the state budget on the town budget, and I understand we're taping this on April 10th, that you were at the Capitol today, and I was going to ask you about the governor's proposal to eliminate the car tax, and you told me something interesting about that. So why don't you tell our audience?
Sure.
So what happened at the what did you hear at the Capitol today?
Well, first let me say how proud we are that we're putting forth a budget that are very conservative to the voters. We'll be setting a public hearing, Board of Finance public hearing, April 24th, and we'll go to referendum in May. Unfortunately, the legislature doesn't adjourn until June. So we're really, at this point, guessing what state aid will be getting. One of the biggest concerns we have is the governor's proposal to eliminate the car tax. Simsbury receives about $6 million in revenue from the car tax. To put that in perspective, the town of Simsbury's budget, just the town side, is $18 million. So a loss of $6 million is about a third of the town of Simsbury operating budget. It would have a significant effect on us, and it would be very difficult to move quickly if that's implemented in June in time for a July 1st mill rate setting of mill rate and new fiscal year. So that was our biggest concern today as mayors and first selectmen all across the state. Very concerned about the car tax. This is the third time under the third governor that this proposal has been recommended. So we're very concerned about that loss of revenue. We also saw significant reductions in other state aid pilot programs that will have an impact on how Simsbury receives their funding. So that is a cause for concern. I think that's one of the reasons why we've really kept our town budget flat for the last 5 years, and in some cases have decreased the budget. The budget that we presented to the Board of Finance was a 0.65% increase before the pension adjustment. That means we calculated the monthly cost for a taxpayer in Simsbury is about $123 for town services. That's been the same amount since 2009. So our budget has really been stagnant over the last 5 years because of our concerns about state aid reductions and because of our concerns that Simsbury generates most of our revenue from our taxpayers. And so any increases in our budget is felt very directly on our taxpayers. We've had to find creative ways to make up that revenue because obviously our costs have gone up for utilities and wage settlements. We introduced a defined contribution plan this year, which will offset the defined benefit concerns. The Board of Ed did that as well. Our employees have given back over the 5 years of wage freezes and increased co-pays. And we've had to go after very aggressively state grants and federal grants to make up some of the revenue that we can't tax our residents for.
Okay, but let's go back to the what you heard about the governor's car tax.
So the car tax initially was a proposal of complete elimination. Today at the Capitol we heard there may be a statewide mill rate. That means I heard anything from about 26 to 27 mills. In Simsbury we're at 32 mills right now. Looking to maybe go to 37 mills if the budgets are approved, as Paul just said. That means that if we're held to only set a statewide mill rate, we'll again see a loss in revenue because we won't be able to collect the amount of revenue that we need to operate both the town and Board of Education budgets. So it's a real
in your considered
concern
opinion, does that have a chance? Or,
I think anything has a chance until that gavel hits
Right.
on
You
June.
never know what they're going to do.
So it's a real concern for us, and it's so unpredictable because here we are being very fiscally conservative. You know, our budgets have been the same since 2009. The state budgets have increased. We fund our pension plans 100% our ARC every year. So it's frustrating for, I think, us on the local level that have put in place all of the necessary cost-saving measures, the regional collaborations, the cooperative ventures, to then turn around and give away our funds to the state. Big concern.
So you will have to set the mill rate and make your decision, though, before the legislature finishes their budget process, or will you get a good idea once the Appropriations Committee comes out with their budget, do you think?
In some cases, I remember in the 90s, the legislature didn't adjourn until September. Cuts were made to education funds in September, and schools were left scrambling to reduce staff and to come up with budget cuts with less than a year to go. So, you never know. It's a real concern for us. And that's why I think we're so prudent, so conservative. Both the town budgets and the Board of Ed budgets are among the lowest in the state. And I think it's a direct result of our concern about our state aid.
We're going to take a short break right now to let us take a breath and to also to showcase the work of several Simsbury High School students who've been working on public service announcements concerning distracted driving and bullying.
Simsbury High School.
Yeah.
What's your name?
Scott Boudreaux.
Okay, you're coming with me. Let's go. And your posse.
Go let him out. Alright. Hey, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that.
Don't be a bully. Know the code.
Matt, we're back now, and I'd just like to take a chance to welcome you to Simsbury. You are our new superintendent, and I haven't had a chance to interview you yet as part of Simsbury School News. So welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Mary just indicated this is your first budget.
This is.
And so how was it? How was the process?
Well, we're still moving through the process, but I think as Mary and Paul talked about as well, I think we've really paid attention to the contextual factors that are impacting the town and the citizens of Simsbury, and really think about what driving factors we have that we can consider to really mitigate the increase that we put forward. Certainly as a district, we know we're in a period of decline in enrollment. We've had quite a bit of study and discussion around that, and I think one of the things that we have been responsible with is to really analyze our enrollment across schools and make what I have called responsible reductions of staff that don't impact program in a negative way, and I think that this budget continues to do that. And as Mary referenced, it's one of the lowest budget increases put forward by a Board of Education in the state. We have some comparative data of over 100 districts that we have been tracking, and we're in the bottom, I believe, 14% of budget increases put forward.
Let me go back to this issue of declining enrollment.
Sure.
What is going on? Is this sort of countrywide issue, or is this Simsbury related, or what is happening? And how big is it?
Yeah, it's not a Simsbury related issue. It's something we're seeing in like communities and seeing across the country, but particularly in New England. And I think much of it, when we study the data, is a decline in birth rate. And I think a lot of that can be tied as well to the state of the economy when we talk to the professionals that come in and work with us on this. But it's not unlike declines that we're seeing in surrounding communities. I believe in the past 5 years we've seen a decline in enrollment of about 8%. And during that time, when we talk about allocation of staffing, we've decreased our staffing by about 7% in that time period. So it's something we're very cognizant of. We engaged in a pretty large-scale study that we called the Facilities and Enrollment Task Force this year, in particular taking a look at our 5 elementary schools and how we utilize space in those schools. And the group came forward with some real solid recommendations about our modular space. We have quite a bit of temporary space that we had put on our school facilities while the enrollment was in an upward trend. And I thought it was prudent to take a look at that space. Some of it is 25 to 30 years old now. As our enrollment goes down, to see if there's any cost savings we can capture over the next 3 years. And we have a pretty detailed plan to remove space from 4 of our elementary schools, which won't impact program, shouldn't significantly impact districts as we see them right now, and more appropriately size our schools to where our enrollment is. And we're hoping we can save upwards of $100,000 over that 3-year period with the removal of that space.
And this may be a naive question, but you said declining enrollment is having some impact on staff. Where are the staff cuts coming, and are parents concerned about class size, et cetera?
No, great question. Class size, we have class size guidelines that really dictate a lot of the decisions we make around staffing. The budget we've put forward this year maintains that as a top priority. So the reductions that we have don't impact class size in a negative way, and I think that's an important point to make. We are seeing a reduction of 4 staffing positions at the elementary level in our K-6 classrooms as a result of an enrollment decline, and 3 FTE or full-time equivalent positions, as we call them, at Simsbury High School. A little bit of FTE, a little bit over 1 at Henry James Middle School is full-time equivalent positions. So those are staffing positions or teaching positions.
Does that mean layoffs of those teachers or by attrition?
Right now, it looks like it'll be by attrition. We just received a couple retirement notices, so we have between 9 and 10 staff retirements, so we hope to be able to offset those reductions with retirements. So hopefully nobody is impacted by a loss of a job.
Let me go back to Paul for a second, or Mary. There was a public hearing. We're taping this on April 10th, and there was a public hearing last night, April 9th. and SCTV was broadcasting it. And what happened?
Well, it was a Board of Finance public hearing. The new charter requires that there be 2 Board of Finance public hearings. The old charter said 1, now there's 2. What happened was that we did have presentations. I did a presentation on the overall state of the financial position of the town. Mary talked about the capital projects that are being brought forward, then presented the operating budget for the Board of Selectmen. Then Lydia Tadone, actually the chairman of the Board of Ed, did the Board of Education budget. We did open it up for public audience. We only had 1 participant in that who decided to talk, which was not a surprise. The interesting thing is that you know, I could take that a couple of ways as far as the lack of real participation. One is that everybody feels that the budgets are well under control, well managed. They know that they're going to have a chance to vote on it, which Simsbury is one of those communities that has an automatic referendum. So if they don't like it, they can vote against it, or vote if they like it, they'll vote for it. And we do hope we get more participation than we have in the last couple of years. The other thing is that there were no pressing issues this year. Last year we had a pressing issue regarding all-day kindergarten, so there were a number of people who came out to talk about that. And in the past we've always found if there's an issue on something that might be you know, the ice skating rink or the golf course or something going on in the schools, then you will get people who will come out for those. In addition, Yukon women were playing for the national championship last night. I guess we need to always schedule these things on a Wednesday in April. And it was a beautiful night. So
yeah, and
we'll look at it from a positive standpoint.
I think that's true. And the only thing I would add is that we've had a lot of budget workshops. We have had a lot of opportunity for the public to comment. All of our budget information is available on the website. We have a special budget page. So I think that people have had an opportunity and do have access to us to tell us what they think outside of the regular public hearing process.
You did say that you thought it was the shortest public hearing you've ever had.
I think it was the shortest public hearing I've ever been
An hour and 40 minutes.
Right. With all the presentations.
With all the presentations. And I think you know, we have a long way to go. We have another public hearing. We have a referendum. But I do think a lot of it is you know, because of our strong fiscal position, the fact that we have a AAA bond rating, the fact that Moody's identified our conservative budgets as one of the reasons why we have a bond rating that's so high, the fact that you know, the town and the Board of Ed give back funds every year. We don't rush to spend all of the money, and where we can find savings and health insurance, we give back. And I think you know, really again, the fact that the budgets have been the same over the last 5 years, the impact on the public, I think, is a significant factor.
The only criticism that I saw anywhere, and I think it was on Patch, and a comment had something to do with a school security officer, that some of the budget increase was due to pay a...
Yeah, and I just want to say it's been a pleasure to work with Matt since he came on board. We work very collaboratively. One of the issues that we wrestle with, as towns across the state do, is school security, especially in light of the Newtown tragedy. The schools and the town both conducted an immediate short-term security need, which the Board of Finance was fortunately approved, and so we're on our way to identify some short-term security improvements. We also identified through the Board of Education a need for a second school resource officer, so we worked to put funds in place to start that process as well. I don't know if you want to add anything there.
No, sure, and this is a proven program, and as Mary referenced, we have one school resource officer right now at the high school, and I think people may have misconceptions about what a resource officer does. Security is one aspect of it, but there's quite a bit more. I mean, our school security resource officer teaches classes, is involved with the health curriculum, making good choices, mediation of problems with students. So besides that increased police presence, which I think is important and something we've been able to do with the resources we have now with our police department, it really rounds out that community relationship. And when we talked about additional personnel to address security, I think what we agreed upon pretty early on is if we were going to go in that direction, we wanted to increase the collaborative with the police department rather than go in a different direction.
We're always looking at best practices, and I think you know, the police and the school Board of Ed should be commended because a lot of those best practices are already put in place, have already been in place in Simsbury. So
I'll add one piece to that. We did bring in a firm to audit our facilities and our procedures and policies relative to school security, and that was the feedback initially we got. I mean, we're going to wait a formal report, but that we are ahead of the curve in terms of some of the things we do, and certainly there's areas for improvement, but we're at a good starting point.
I just wanted to mention to our viewers that Matt and I are going to be taping another show that will run in May that will deal with both school security issues in Simsbury on a more comprehensive basis, and on the issue of school climate. So you'll get a chance to get to know Matt better and learn more about those issues in Simsbury. And I want to thank you. We've actually gotten almost to the end. I want to thank you for coming. I just want to point out again that people have a chance to comment on the budget on April 24th. I'm not sure where that is. Is that, have you made a decision?
We haven't made a decision yet, but it'll be posted shortly.
Okay, so it either will be at the high school or it will be at Town Hall. And if you love the budget or you hate the budget, whatever, in Simsbury you always have a chance to vote on it. And there will be a vote on the budget on...
tentatively, we have it set for May
14th?
14th.
That is it? I just went out of my head. If you missed the presentation on the budget, the full presentation on the budget at the hearing on April 9th, you can catch it here on SCTV. And reminder, there will be another hearing on April 24th. And of course, you can vote on the budget on the 14th, and that will be at Henry James. I'm going to wrap up now. Thank you, all of you, for coming.
You.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching us on SCTV, and thank everybody here for helping us get on the air. And thanks to Mark Hartunian as well, whose class provided the PSAs that we've seen and that we will be seeing on safe driving and bullying. Thank you again. Mary Glassman, Matt Curtis, and Paul Henault.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.